Hello, oh, I fell off my chair. Hello, Shirley Peters here. It's a funny little stool I'm sitting on at the moment. I've moved over from my desk, the watercolour desk, over to this one here. Today, acrylic painting. I have bought paints, student quality, very reasonably priced. I have bought brushes, very reasonably priced. Don't know if you call them student quality or personally I'd use them on a professional job. And a block of watercolour paper that is not the good quality, it is a cheap quality, which means it's not cotton, it is normal wood-based, fibre-based paper. And it is Australian brand, I think, DERWENT, I'm not sure, might be English. And 12 sheets, artist watercolour pad, A3, and it's 300 GSM, grams per square metre. Anyway, so the paint, these three, the brushes, the paint and the pad cost $60. I've broken them down. The paints came in a kit and they are 3 primaries and black and white. And that was a student kit for $18. I think you need some extra paints on top of the 3 basics. I would, if you're giving them as a gift to someone, throw in some violet or purple, throw in a burnt umber. They're your 2 pretty much basic extras. And I also did a cobalt blue because I just wanted a variety of blues. See the top colour, you can see the colour of the paint from the top and from the label. And if that's the warm blue, then I'm looking for a slightly different colour blue as well. So now that said, normally I would use a painting medium, but honestly, water's fine. You don't need to use that. Sometimes on very hot days I might use it, but at the moment I'm going to do this painting with just water because I want it to look like a watercolour painting. If I do a watercolour painting, if I do it like a watercolour, but I'm doing it on paper, I can mount it with my technique onto a fairly cheap canvas. Now, you might say, why don't I just do the watercolour painting style using acrylic paint on the canvas to start with? And yes, good question, sometimes I do. Sometimes though, when I'm travelling, I can get 12 paintings out of a pad like this. That's fantastic. So 12 canvases takes up a lot of room. So for travelling, paper. For sometimes, you know, the actual freshness of the paint on paper and the way it absorbs into paper is so much more special than the way it sits on the surface of the canvas. So that's just, what would you call that? A feeling that you get with the watercolour technique on the fresh white paper. What else? Why else would I do it? Cost. Look, you don't know if all your paintings are going to work. So much easier to do them on paper, and maybe they'll work, maybe they won't. If you put them on canvas, well, maybe you've used up a big canvas that you'd rather have not done that. Now, admittedly, you can repaint off a canvas, but then you've lost your painting. So sometimes it's easier to do paintings on paper and only mount or frame the one that turns out to be the best. And that way you've got others that just sit around and you can remind you of what you did right or wrong, and you can use them as for personal memories, or you can just, whatever, just a cost thing. So that said, I shall get started and you can watch over my shoulder and see what you think. Also, if you'd like the video, please subscribe. If you haven't already subscribed, click the like button, click the notification bell. That one's good because that notifies you when I upload a new video, be it middle of the night, whenever. No, it doesn't. It would be great if you just click that notification bell as well. Thank you in advance. I'm going to do a fairly simple painting today. It's a seascape with land behind, land in front. It's got a fancy sky. I'll show you the sky, but I don't think I'll put that in. I think that's why I took the photo. It was like a big wave of cloud coming across. And for this particular exercise, I don't want to do anything as dramatic as that. I want to do something fairly straightforward, just to show you the way I would paint this picture. So, as with my watercolour paints, I'll put the brush to one side. I'll take out a nice big brush if I haven't already got one out. I've lost one already, I think. I've got my paints here, so what I will do in a case like this is I know I want to, actually what I might do first is sketch it up a little bit, because there are some decisions to make on where you want the land, not that straightforward. Centre of the page, I won't fold it this time, but it's around about the land base. The land is a bit above the centre line, and I'm just going to do some very basic straight lines. There's no beach there, but I'm just going to run that around a little bit as if there might be a beach. There's some trees in the foreground. Oh, there's one big dead tree, and you know, I might just turn it into a live tree, but we'll see. The bushes are in the shade, and they've got some mounds of grass in the foreground and a few rocks over here actually, and what looks like another tree there. Now out here, but I won't actually put that tree in. It's too far out. It's too far beyond the centre of vision. I don't think anyway. Maybe sometimes I say I won't do something and I end up doing it, but I'll make a decision later. I've just added some rocks there, and then of course just to make life difficult, I'll just make this headland a bit higher, because I want to make just touching very gently in there the distant horizon. So I've got two blues to play with, which is fun. Oops, where are they? I'd like to ask people who make these paints to wrap the colour right around, so you don't always know which way. They all look like white from behind. Please, just a little request, put the colour all the way around. So with acrylics, I'll just mix up the two colours. When I say mix up, I'll put two colours in my palette that I want to use straight away. So I'll put the light blue in. I'll put what they call warm blue, which I think might be more ultramarine. Two colours, fairly basic. One big brush, biggish brush. So remember, I'm doing this as if it's a watercolour. So the first thing I'm going to do is mix the two together, or actually mix up one, mix the other a little bit. Notice how much water I'm putting on the palette. Really quite wetting that paper. So I'm going to start at the top here. I'm just going to apply the paint. By the way, it's a hot day here in Australia, so I'm going to work it as I go. I'm going to work water into this to keep it wet. I'm adding water now already. So this is a learning curve for me, because to tell you the truth, I've never used these paints, all this paper before. So I'm going to actually add water all the way down the page. As the sky comes down to the horizon, I'll put in that other shade of blue, the warm blue. No, hang on, they called that cobalt blue. They've called it. I'm leaving the horizon quite loose. Just going to dig in and take out a couple of those clouds up there. Do it fairly quickly while it's still wet. Now this is definitely watercolour technique. Not coming out too well. In fact, the paper, the paper doesn't like that. The paper's beginning to pill, so I won't do much of this technique. That's an example of what cheap paper would do compared to a quality Arches paper would not do that. It wouldn't pill, peel up. I'm going to put a little bit of purple while I'm at it on the plate, because I'm going to just add. See, while you leave these paints in a lump, what was I going to say? I'm putting purple on there because I'm going to add some purple in that distance. But I just wanted to say quickly that you leave the paints in a lump, and that those won't dry out. This area here will dry out pretty quickly. So I'm just going to add some purple up here in that area. Not trying to lose brush strokes. I'm happy to see the brush strokes. Now go back to the ocean, and I'm going to mix both those blues together. When I mix together, sometimes I don't mix properly. I just half mix. And that way, on the brush, you're going to end up with some Bob Ross happy accidents. But also, you don't know. You want a variety of blue because it satisfies the eye to see. It's swapping back from cool to warm. So I'm just going to use a lot of water here and spread this colour down into the sea. I could make a few little areas here where the distant shoreline has jagged edges. And according to my photograph, which by the way I'll put up in the top corner as a permanent fixture, so that because I keep moving it around and it keeps falling down and doing annoying things. So I'm just going to come around with some water shapes, wave shapes, as it's drying, because it dries virtually as you paint it on. That's why I'm using more water than I am pigment. To tell you the truth, at this stage I'm quite happy with this strength of paint that's coming out of these brushes. To tell you the truth, I'm very happy with the strength of paint that's coming from these tubes. Definitely. It's very nice. I'll add a bit of purple over this side while it's still a bit wet. Now I'm expecting it all to dry in minutes. That's been running down there, not a problem. Sometimes when you go back into an area it's already dried, or it's half dried, and you can actually do a bit of damage. So sometimes it's better to wait for something to completely dry. I've gone right over the edge of those stones. I'm not worrying about, or the rocks. I'm not worried about the rocks. I'm not worried about the landform at this stage. I've just zigzagged that water line like that. I'll just let that dry. I'll keep the brush moist. So you might think, oh, I've wasted those paints, and yes, that could be the case if I don't end up going back over the blue. So it just goes to show how little you needed to use to get that rich colour. While I'm at it then, I tend to go for one paper plate has cools on it and one has warm. I've only got one yellow in this kit. I don't have any choice, so that's going to be my yellow. Now to make green, I can take this colour here, this slightly warmer blue. I think that's a warmer blue. They call the other one warm blue, but this is better. Now I've made a green there. I shall wet it and drag it out so that it's very, very thin. I'm thinning it, thinning it, thinning it. Now, just looking to see where these, looks like there's houses up on the ridge there and a graveyard over there, but I don't know that I'll be putting those in. But I'll just run this down. I'm not waiting for it to dry because I'm impatient. So I'm just going to do some fun things like vertical strokes. And out to the end. Scrub back in a little bit like that, that's good. Going to wet my brush. Because it's a long way away over there, I want to make that brown edge. I can take the purple and mix it with a bit of the green. Just to make a nice dark colour, you pick two opposites on the colour wheel. I'll just put this in quickly, just to give myself a feel for where the rocks are going to go over that other side. And I'll go thick in some places and then thin and thick and thin. I'll be coming back over these. This is kind of the shadow colour of those rocks in the distance. And I'll just start with a few rocks out to sea there. While I've got that mixed up, if I let it sit there as if it was oil paint, it would dry, so I'm going to use it while I've got it. I'm going to use it in the foreground. Now, this is where you change from being, I've done a watercolour style painting there. Now I'm going to do an oil style painting where you put the darks in first, then you come back over with light opaque paint. So all this front part is going to get darkened using what I've already put out, which is the purple. Yay, I'm going to be using it up, and the blue. I'll mix it with the green. And there you go, I've got a nice dark neutral shade. Doesn't matter if it's tinted one way or the other. In fact, if it's tinted towards purple, I'd be happy. So I'm just going to apply that fairly loosely in the foreground. Not worrying about any of the detail. I'm not even, well, I'm hardly looking at the photo. I looked at the photo for the top edge, but the rest of it I'm just sticking that in. Now I'll grab a bit more of the blue, put that in with the green, and the purple and the black, everything I've got there really. So I just want to see what's happening over here. I'll hold my reference up. And I'll just fill the whole area in down the foreground. Now it's nearly dry. It's nearly completely dry. So one of the main things is not let your brush dry out, so the brush gets a good wet. When I've done a lot of painting, like messing around on these sort of palettes, I will sometimes now take a knife, if I've got one, yes I've got one here, and I might, if I'm not happy with this area, I'll take this paint off and start a fresh paper, which I can do here now. I just scrape everything that's wet. Daggy on knife. Got perfectly good new ones over there, but I'm using this. And that blue can come over here. And that way I can discard those. In fact, I put them in the bin just to keep everything neat and tidy. So, I'll soak that. Just waiting for things to dry now. So basically, it's the best thing you can do is to sit and wait, like you do with watercolour. I can get a dryer out, but it's such a fine day outside that I think this will dry in no time. What I want to do is add the sunshine over this side because it needs to be golden. I'll add some, I'll make on my plate some yellow, some warm red. I love the way these just come straight out of the tube. They don't have any little bits of plastic to peel off. I'm going to do a green, so I'll use the blues that I've already made up here, that I've already squeezed out. I'll bring it over here, and I want to make it a warm green, so a little bit of blue and a lot of yellow. And now I have to, that's too pretty, so to knock it back, add a bit of the red. And that starts to become a more interesting browny, oh, blue got in there, a bit of yellow got in there. Hang on, a bit more yellow, a bit more red. Now, that's a colour that I think I can, no, a bit more yellow. So I'm going to water this down now on this side, maybe over here. A little bit of what's on my brush, add some water to it, thin it. I'm just going to put it on top there to see, and I'm putting it in lines going down. I can see this paper's beginning to buckle a little bit, but that's all right, I won't worry about that. I'll dip back into the yellow. I want to get a bit more yellow in that. So that'll be the dark areas. I'm going to have to come over that with some much lighter colour, which means digging out the white, which is the fun part. Looking just at the tips of these. While I'm here, I'll just start adding a little bit more detail. I've added red and yellow together, and I'm just putting a little bit of warmth, a bit more yellow, random things on the brush here. I guess it's probably weed or something growing over there that's making it look a little bit warmer towards the edge of the cliffs. Now that adds just a bit of variety to that green, which, let's face it, it's kind of the hero of the shot. So I keep washing my brush. I don't go to a separate brush. Now, the magic element I have to add at this stage is white. So I'll put a bit of white onto the plate. I should say a fair bit of white onto the plate. I'm going to take that white and mix it in with the current stock of green. And I'm going to take a bit of the yellow, mix it in with the current stock of green. So you can see how I'm working. I'm definitely keeping it all wet. I'm not letting it dry out. And I'm not keeping a lot on my palette at any one stage, so that if it did dry out and I was called away accidentally and I wasn't able to cover it with plastic or something, I'm not going to lose a lot of paint. So I'm just putting those areas in up there fairly roughly on purpose. Making up little fields here and there and leaving some of the dark behind. This is the beauty. This is where acrylic starts to come in to its own. I'll wash the brush again. In fact, I'm just going to get wet water on my brush, and before that dries completely, I'll see how I go doing a bit of blending. This is what you do with oil paint, you blend it together. And that's still blending quite well, even though it's acrylic. People can say that, often say they can't blend, you can't blend with acrylic, but that's not true. It's nothing fancy, you just got to do it a bit while it's still wet. It's not rocket science, I guess what I'm trying to say. I'm loading the brush up fairly thickly there and just doing a few little areas of very thick paint. Just good fun to do. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Less is more. I'm going to, what's the next stage? There's a lot of white to go around the edges of the shoreline, and while I've got the white in my palette, there's no reason why I can't do that right away. So I'll just put some, I've got a wettish brush, not too wet, but I'm using the very edge of the sharp edge, flat edge I suppose you could call it. Leave a gap here and there. That one might have been too much. I might have to come back over that, take that out. I'll show you what to do there later. Oh, I just went, the brush slipped on my hand then. So Sometimes that does, I do that with the, oh. Okay, I'm back now. I'll take these out, sort it out in the electrician. Oh gosh, how does this work? Bits have dried, a bit on the paper there. If you use plastic paints, you might find it lasts, plastic plates, you might find it lasts a little bit better, but personally I don't like the idea of having to clean them up all the time, and I don't like throwing them out. So what I'm doing here, I'll take this white, I'm going to put it over here on the blue plate because I don't want it to be messed around with too much. I'm thinning it down with water, and I'm just going to have a play with it over the top. I've got to decide where I'm going to put it. So I'm just going to run brush around like that. Half transparent. This is where if I wet it again, kind of need fresh water there. I might do that in a minute. Blend it out. I'll do another one about here. I'm following the picture a little bit where there's thickening of the foam. I'm thickening it here too. So I'm using the edge of the brush, dragging it out like that. Now I'm going to use the very corner of the brush. Just tap in some thick parts. Just put it on top of that while it's still a little bit damp. There's what looks like a wave forming back there, and while I've got the white on my brush, I'll just do the top of the wave. Oh, not being very accurate there, I'll just try and concentrate. There we go. Some fun colours needed in the water. I love doing water, I just find it really good, but I think having left this for too long, I think I'm finding, there you go, see that cobalty blue hue has dried up on me, so I'll add that back in. If I had to go and buy some more paints, I'd definitely be buying a lemon yellow. This is a bit too warm. I'd rather a cool yellow to be able to make the correct adjustments to the blues. Sometimes you've got to add a tiny bit of yellow to the blues and to make a beautiful green or teal colour. That's not a bad one. Just going to add that in a big long strip over here. I'm sitting a little bit crooked, this sort of behaviour, but that's a little bit hard what I'm doing there now, to tell you the truth. I wouldn't recommend you do that too often, in so much as if I made a mistake on that line, oh, it's not the end of the world, I suppose. I'll come back over it later. I keep forgetting that. Keep coming back over things. Beauty of acrylic, you can make many changes. So I've done a few stripes in those little brush strokes I just made then. I'll wet the brush. Not that I need to. I'm just going to blend it here and there. Down the front here, behind this foam, you can't quite see it, but there is a very dark still area in the water, so I'm just going to add that in. And then wet the brush again. And I'm just going to blend the back of it out with water, just water on the brush alone. Too much water. See, there's a splash of water. It came down but didn't make any difference because the paint's already dry. Which is brilliant. Just trying to see, there's a bit of dark on the other side of that foam too. So just for the sake of interest, half wet brush, load it up with paint and just tap it like a little drawing. Put a few lines in. The nice thing is, once it's dried, you can start putting layers over the top. And that said, I just want to dig in and get a little bit of a real natural green under here. Real green. I'll take it right out to the edge. I don't know why I'm stopping there, short of that edge. I think it's because it's curling up a little bit. Fill that gap in. Now water. Just going to, I can see there I've put a line there I didn't really want to have. So the other thing you can do is just keep adding. If you don't, if you're not too fussed, just put the new wet paint on top of the area that was dried before. That doesn't matter that much. I'm just going to wet that white. Yeah, it's just still soaking into the while the water's still soaking into the paper, you can still treat it like watercolour. And that's what I'm doing there. I'm putting on a very transparent little area there, just to blend over the top of that sharp edge. Just try bringing it in like that. These have faded off a lot, so I'm going to add more white over the top. I'm just going to go into a couple of little separations of the white foam and leave the little bits of blue in there, which is basically shadow white. Bring it. Nice little bit of foam coming around the front there. Often these photographs, they look fairly simple, but once you start painting them, see so many more details, which is the same as when you're out doing plein air. You think you've chosen a fairly simple little view. When you look at it, start looking at it, wow, it's really complex. Now, I'm going to darken in there a little bit and then come back over it with white. But at the moment, I'll leave that just sit there for the time being. Just have a bit of fun. I love white. Just bring that in. Can't quite see detail behind that tree, but painting it in, ignoring totally, as you can see, I haven't done anything with the tree at this stage. Still got yellow here, still got red here, so I'll make up a little bit of orange and I'll add white to that mixture, and that makes a beautiful sand colour. A little bit more white, I think. I think I'll bleach it out in the sun. Oops. Just push it up into those rock shapes. Just stretching it out with a little bit of almost dry brush, but it's nicely blending. Now, while I've got that creamy colour mix, I'm going to grab that on my brush and dab that over into the distance here. Two places. One of them I'm going to try on the edge of the actual grass that's coming down. But there's also, I was thinking of putting, add a little bit of white to it and adding it to some of these rock formations. But I'm not sure. I'll just try it and just see what it looks like. I'm not sure it's the right colour. I think I need to go for a more bluish white. which case I think I've got blue still alive. I'll add that blue colour. I'll just add that into the white I've got mixed there. Notice that there's no logic to the palette. I try and keep a warm palette and a cool palette, but in the end it just goes a bit odd. It goes messy. What am I trying to say, Shirley? I lose control of the palette, but that's all right. So just putting a few little grey spots over there to catch, for the sun to catch those rocks. Now I could leave that for the time being. I'm very tempted. Actually, I might, while I've still got blue that's alive. See, this is a matter of looking around your picture and finding which parts still can make use of the paint that you haven't dried out. It hasn't been dried out yet. You know what I mean? Okay, so what I've done there is tucked in a little bit of very dark blue in a random way. Now I'm going to wet the brush really well, clean it off so it's just got clear water on it, and then push into the edge of that. It's actually a shadow from that foam. So the more I make it lumpy, like, what's the word? Not straight. more crooked I make that line, the more it's going to look like it is the shadow from that foam. And then there's an opportunity here. I'll just add white and I think a tiny bit of purple, just for variety. In my photograph it looks like a really pale blue, but I think I'd just like to put violet, which I haven't used all that much yet in this picture. I did in the sky, but not in the water that much. So I'm going to mix very pale white, thick mauve colour. Just going to tap it around the edge. Oh, it's a little bit too pink. Okay, put more blue in it. Quite blue. Now white. So I have ended up with quite a cool little spot. I'm just going to spot that around the very edge there. This is where I could use a smaller brush. This is a bit silly, keeping with the big brush here, because I could have so much more control with a smaller brush. So I've just grabbed anything smallish, small wedge-shaped bristle. And I'm going to just put it on the bottom edge of that rounded foam, rolling in shape. And if I go back to wipe that off, I won't wash it because I don't want to get too watery. I want it to stay thick. Just put some thick white paint. It's almost like you're sculpturing this edge. When you put the thick white paint on it, you get a shadow underneath those layers of paint. Put the big brush back in the water. I'll give myself some more white here to do this foam. The foam has to stay very, very thick because you're putting white over the top. I could have left the foam white paper underneath, and that would be something to think about for next time. So just tapping it in little lumps back here. Over this way. Got some lovely shadows happening as well here, so I'll play with those a little bit later, because being acrylic you can put a wash over the top and it'll look fantastic. Over there. Right in the distance, it's just as white in the distance as it is up close, as opposed to all the other colours. They vary for distance and close. White is white. black even pales out in the distance. Now, a little bit more over there. I might flatten that out a bit. Oops. Okay, let's pretend there's waves. While I've got this, I haven't really looked up at the sky for a little while, but while I've got this white in my palette, I can just use up that last little bit before I chuck this one out, or paint over the top of it, which I'm beginning to do. Let's see. I know I said I wasn't going to put those clouds in that formation, but I told a lie because I'm going to do it now. Not as rigid, maybe. I might not do it as formal as it is in real life because it's unbelievable and it might make my painting look a bit weird. It's alright for a photograph to get away with that sort of thing because you know it's real, but when it's a painting you think, oh, they made a mistake. It doesn't look like that. So just lumps, bumps. I'll make them quite thick. Beauty of this particular type of painting, this type of landscape cloud, is that it's very much a exaggerated perspective. So right down here I can do this quite thin. Okay. Let's mix up some of the blues. See what I've got here. I'll add some more colour in here. It's fun. A few horizontal lines. Blend it in at the top there. No idea what's happening over here because it's behind a tree, but I'll just guess that it's paler. I'll just put some of those horizontal lines in back there. Oops. Always check what's underneath your brush. Big blob of white just went on there and I didn't really intend, but I'll work that in. Like that. That's fine. Okay. This area here could be blended out a little bit, so I'm putting some, just using what's on the brush. I know it's white. I haven't checked it, but I'm just going for kind of enough. It's fresh, it's good enough. I haven't got anything on the hill over there, and I might add a hint of what looks like, I'll make out that it's trees. So that means a little bit of purple, a little bit of blue. I've got red. What will that do? That will make a nice reddy. I'll just see how that looks. I'll put a couple of verticals. I'll use the side of my brush like this. So it's a hint of something happening over there without actually saying what it is. So I'm just doing some horizontal dabs. See if I can mix up a green, which it's oddly enough I can actually see green there, so I will put a little bit of green at the beginning of it to make it look like trees. And that doesn't look like trees at all. I mean, that looks weird, so I'll just put blue over the top of that. Yep. I kind of like it when it does that. A little bit of water went on there, it made a little bit of a blob. I don't mind that at all. In fact, I'm thinking I might add, just for the interest's sake, some structural detail back here. I'll add blue, purple, yellow, just sort of getting down to a very neutral grey. If I can find one in these colours. And I might just use the side of my brush and put in some shapes that could be seen as buildings. And that's the horizontal shapes, like rectangles floating out there. Now I think it's time to address the foreground. I have to look at what I've got here and think, do I want fresh? I've got some yellow there. I've got some blue here. I'll see what sort of a green I can make out of that. Oh, there's some white there too. So mixing these together, Not much left here, but I can use what is there as a sort of a beginning to put in these grassy patches. Rather cute, rather classic, because the way they're in waves. So I'm just starting with the beginning of what's left on my palette, which is sort of a combination of lots of different cool shades. These are rocks, so what I want to do here is possibly chuck that out. I've got a little bit of red on that worth keeping, so what I'll do is take that red and put it onto a new plate just on the side so that I don't lose it altogether. Now there's not enough paint on that to worry about, so I'm chucking that one out. I'll start with a new brush, and I want to put the burnt umber. Oops. When I say new brush, I'll start with a new palette. What will I do here? I'm going to be needing blue, so I will put some blue out, and I might put out some the other blue, ultramarine blue. So I've got brown, I've got two blues. I'm going to need the yellow. Can come out. Probably need the white, because that yellow and this white together are the way I'm trying to form a lemon yellow, because I do feel I'm missing out on a lemon yellow. So I'll mix those together. White itself, by the way, is a little bit blue. When you're if you had to line up all your cool colours and all your warm colours, white would go on the cool side, believe it or not. So, and in my mind, so does black, but it depends on the type of black. So here I'm just putting in some sun, where the sun's hitting on the grass, just exaggerating some of these areas. In fact, that's about the only place the sun hits. No, that's totally wrong. I'll cut that out of the video if I remember. So wrong. Okay, so putting in some beautiful patterns down here. So I've got the warm yellow, white, a touch of that, what they call cobalt blue, which I think is cerulean. I think they've got the name wrong. Now there's a few spots of colour down here. I might just change the colour of the green a little bit. I'm going to, oops, okay, this requires a clean brush. For as much as possible on this particular painting, oops, there's a splash, I'm keeping to the same size brush, because it adds a uniformity. If you go too fine, I know I jumped into fine brush through there, but on the whole, you want to be able to restrict yourself from doing that. So I'll just put some cool greenery down here. When I say cool, I've added a lot of blue. Now we're getting to the point where we're working like oils. So I'm going to be looking for decision what type of paintbrush to use next. I think I'll go for the really fine one. And I'm going to put some black on my palette for the shadowy areas of those branches and for branch details. Interesting to see how black the black is in these student quality paints. So I have to lean in a little bit to get the detail here. So putting it on quite thickly, loading the tip of the brush, and in a way letting it blob a little bit. It's not, I don't think it's strong enough to be used like ink, but it is quite, it's going on quite well there. Oops. This is where the brush can be a little bit tricky if it doesn't give you a fine enough line. So what I'm doing here, I won't necessarily take up time on this video doing it, but I could spend hours having fun with branches like that. I imagine these trees are dead trees, so I'll kind of leave them like that. It's a statement. This area is a place called Kiama, just south of Sydney. And this photograph will be available on my website for download if you'd like to use it for yourself. I'll just rinse that off. Grab my towel. Oh yes, there's just a couple of areas here I wanted to make it easy on the eye, so to see where it was definitely going behind, in front of the background. I think sometimes you get confused, your eye can be confused and go, where's that coming from? And you have to just fill in the gaps sometimes. For example, that little bit of branch there, that would annoy me incredibly if I didn't make something definite on that side. And in here, I'll just put a little bit of, oops, it's getting a bit thin there. Okay, a few little strokes here and there, just to make it look like it's real. Down here, I'm very black, solid black, right, and I might do that one too. I'm really pushing hard with that little brush. A lot of fun. Now, tie that in. Give it another, make it a bit thicker there. These trees down the bottom here are, I'll see what I can get out of the blues that are left on my palette. A little bit of yellow there, that's good. So I'll just add another colour. Sometimes it's good to have multiple different shades of blues and greens. As long as you keep them all in a similar tone, you can start playing around with variations in the hue. So say I'm putting a little bit of yellow down there, but I'm trying to keep it a dark yellow because it's in amongst dark blues. I'll use that same, just about had it I think. I've got black and brown, so throw the cat another canary. I shall take another, the red's still going, so I'll move that onto the next plate. The black can be transferred across, burnt umber transferred across. I think I'll get a clean palette knife. Can't be that hard to get a clean palette knife. A little bit of white, skip the white. So this way, oh that was yellow, skip the white there. This way you're not really losing too much. If you can, I've been gone an hour. Normally that would be bad luck, all gone, all dried up, but no, they're pretty good. They haven't got any medium in them, they're straight from the tube. This is the Chromacryl. Quite enjoying them. Now the other thing with students acrylic is that, or any sort of students quality paint is it can fade quickly. So one thing I'd like to do with this is leave it out in the sun. And back in art school, we were encouraged to cut a painting into, I think there were two choices. There was in a drawer, on the wall inside, outside in the sun, and I think outside in the shade. There might have been four. We were encouraged to cut a painting into 4 pieces and put them around in those positions, and then look at them every year and decide what was how that particular paint was faring. And obviously you would want the one in the drawer to stay exactly the same. You'd want the one inside to stay exactly the same. But it's interesting what happened to outside positions. I have a few paintings hanging outside. They don't seem to be affected by the rain or anything. I mean, they go a bit mouldy on the back of the canvas, but the paint itself is staying pretty good. So I'm just putting some more layers over these sunny parts. I'll take the grass up into the heights above into the dark area, just like that. So that I just might move my hand over it, fingers across it, just to smudge it a bit. Now there's rocks here at the back. There's no real need. In fact, I'll go back to my bigger brush. Actually, this time I might use a medium-sized brush. Why not, seeing as I've got them? Oh, this is fun. I've always wanted to use a filbert. Is it a filbert? A wedge, I guess you. I don't know what you call that. It's sort of down on one side. A lot of watercolourists use this. Well, somewhere in here I've got brown, and I'm going to mix it with a bit of white. And because this is very much in the shade, I'm going for a blue, brown, white together. Look at that. Oh, it's a beautiful brush. So just going to do those colours across the top of those rocks, leaving what's already there as on the vertical side. I'll add a fair bit more white and blue. Actually, it's not the right colour blue. I really want the, I hate to do this, but French ultramarine blue it needs to be in my book. Pretty important to get these lids straight back on, tight. Get in the habit of doing that, and that will help their longevity, because you get these plastic tubes actually hold air inside, and whereas the old-fashioned metal zinky, the ones that oil paints normally come in, they collapse down and there's no air inside the tube. That said, I'm mixing up a light blue, and what I want to do is just run it across the top of this rock, because that's the sky reflecting on the top of that rock. Do a couple of little random shapes. A little bit of the fine. Where else have I got rocks? I've got rocks down in the water there, but I'm not going to do those. I've got this sort of like a hairy edge on that grass. I could play around with that a little bit. I don't want to overdo it, but I want to make it look like I've had a thought and like I've done something about it. I don't want it to look like it's just forgotten. So I'll just deliberately throw some paint onto it. I'll wash that brush. I've just noticed that there's some lovely sticks coming up into the waters, overlapping the water. But on the other hand, there's this beautiful shadow area that is the shade from this hill. So what I'd like to do is, as soon as that dries, I'm going to do an all-over wash of this area. Should I put the white down first? I think I should. I'm going to put the white in first, and then I'm going to let it dry, which won't take long, believe you me. I've got white here. I'll bring that over there. So I'll mix it up. I'm going to put it on my very thin brush, and I'm going to do these little bits of foam that hang around on top of the water. I have to choose the right brush. Even though you'd think that was a thin brush, it's not. It's actually got quite a fat end on it. I know which one might work. This little wedge thing. It's like the other one, a slanting top. Call it a filbert, but I don't think it is. Half filbert maybe. So what I want to do is try and get a very sharp point. I'll get more white onto my... This is where I need to have a strong saturated white. This is a test. If it's not saturated enough, it keeps fading away. So I'm just going to hold my hand. I might put my finger down like that as well. And I just want to draw fine lines in little zigzag shapes all the way around here. This is where a rigger would be very helpful, but seeing I'm restricting myself to what I can achieve with this brush set and these brushes and these paints and this paper. Oops. Oh, I could do the back. Yeah, I could do that. Could do a finger. Kind of smudge it in a bit. Yeah, that might work. I'm smudging it more than I should, but it's just trying to find the finest line from the tip of this brush. It's all over down here, right to the very edge. So in one way, I could come back and do the darker. Losing patience. I'm not very good at detail. I'll just dab it around, see what happens. Some areas are fatter than others, which is good, because it suits my random style. Rather than going in circles, all the shapes I'm trying to do here are flattened off, so they're ovals. And quite white, foamy area coming down into this part down here. And then I have to look at the back to see which other areas have got the foam on them, a little bit out there. Oh yeah, a nice little bit of wash is coming over the top of this wave. So I'll just touch that in there, just hopefully that works. Not really anywhere else I need to put the white. It'll be interesting, it's probably needed at this area here, but I haven't got a picture of it, so I'm not positive, but I'll put it in anyway. And I might come back and just darken that edge where the sand is wet. Experience tells me that, although I do love that gradation that's there, but I do think there would be white there. Okay. Now, I'm going to take a new plate. Probably gone through about 6 plates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is number 7. Just going to put some violet on the plate. Just going to wait for that to dry. 2 seconds, however long it takes. While I'm doing that, sometimes you can look around and see other things that need doing. I'll get some black on my brush. Oh, what did I see just then? I just think these branches could do with a little bit of darkness on the shadow side. That will make them look a little bit more solid. Sometimes you can put the darkness in the middle. It doesn't always have to be on the shadow side. Okay, so there. And of course this particular beast at the front here, that branch going, or tree going across there, that needs to be quite strong. And now that I look at that, that's curled up that little bit, but I haven't done anything in there. I could add some, I'll just add some greenery in there that looks like it might be, but no more green left. Tiny bit of, I'm reluctant to put paint out now. I'm getting a bit miserly with it because I've nearly finished the painting. Dark blue, a little bit of the yellow. I'll just scrumble it in there. That way the eye will join the two sides, either side of that log. Put a bit in down here. I would love to spend a bit more time on the front here with the detail of, but I'm going to wait till after I put the shadow in. Keep these brushes as clean as possible because the acrylic will set like glue. Even once you've finished painting, it's always best to wash them with soap because you think they're clean and you come down the next day to start painting and they've all gone hard as rocks. And the reason being that the acrylic paint has got glue in it and it's invisible, you can't see it. Think you've washed it off. So keep all the brushes that you've used in one day and take them up to the house or wherever you live and give them a proper shampoo with a bit of real soap or detergent. So this is one of the fun things I like to do. I'm hoping that it's all dry now. They're not really dry. I've got to stop continually pushing forward. I'll add a little bit of purple at the back here to these buildings to make them sit on the ground a bit. Don't want to be too bright with that. Down here. Yep, it's going to work. It's going to be good. Okay. A couple of things are okay here, and that is I'm just about to have fun. I've used the big brush and looking at my photograph I can see shadow going all the way down there in the water, obviously from trees that are here. So I'm going to put them in and they start about there. So it comes across like that, down into that area, across like this, down there, into this shadow. Oops. Back again. Somewhere or other my brush's paint has gone into a little bit of black somewhere. I think there's a lump of black on that tree that wasn't totally yeah. Oh. While I'm doing this, I'll just run a bit of water across the top edge just to smooth that out. Oh, might be too late already. Oh no, it's okay. Difference between watercolour and acrylic. Once that dries, you've lost it, but while you can keep attacking it while it's a bit wet. Now this purple I'm putting over the top of the green. Not everywhere though, it's going to have to be in the shadow. So it's going to be just where the sun is not hitting. Looking at my photograph, it's going to be like that. A bit like this. It's almost like a glaze, putting it over the top. Oops. At the back here I'm going to put a little bit more of that glaze. I'm just going to put a few lines of very wishy-washy purple in. will indicate that the sun is not shining in those spots. Okay. I won't need to play with the water anymore. I could come back a bit with the bright branches that are down the foreground here. Now my shadow is definitely pinker than it should be, so I'll have a think about that and decide. I do like purple, but it's obviously a bright, exaggerated purple, but to tell you the truth, I don't mind it. I'm tended to do those sort of colours myself. I think if I go really bright, to balance that up, like normally say, oh, that's, the eye's going to be drawn to that, but you know what, I'm going to put some really bright, what do you call it, grass blades of grass in the front here. I'll mix up some white and yellow, and that will counteract that purple and make it, kill it off in a way, or just make it work, I think. It's a very personal thing. Some people might be looking at this going, oh my gosh, way too colourful, or wrong, totally wrong. Okay. This is where you can also have some fun. Towards the end, you're starting to use the acrylics the way they're supposed to be used, which in, oops, I won't bother picking that up, in many cases is in a palette knife way. So I might just have some fun and smudge some of those areas. This is where you end up with a lot of thick paint in the foreground, in the pale areas. I'm putting it on first, and then I'm just going to take it off. Notice that in random areas, when I say take it off, can't remember what I was talking about. Random areas, okay. Yellows in amongst that. Now I'm going to use the side of that brush to definitely, some smudge, some up, some sideways, some up, some sideways, some up. And join it into the bottom of the page, so it's obviously more of it down here. You don't want it to look like it's sitting alone. A couple of big long spikes in there like that. Oh yeah, that's one thing I wanted to do down here, was to put some black ones in the opposite, in the opposing way, but see how this biggest brush can give me the finest of fine lines. There I was hunting before for something that would give me some thin lines. Oh, it was staring me in the face, and it was the big fat brush that I started with. So I'm just finishing off here with some real blacks. If I put real black dark area in there, that'll pop forward this hill here. Every now and then you do a lot of strokes, a lot of vertical stripes, a lot of vertical strokes. Every now and then pull your brush across them like that. Join a few together. Back there, down here. Now I shall just play around with this area as well. So I really want the star of the show, apart from the fact that it's the water. I don't want this foreground to be forgotten. I want it to be saying a little bit of, look at me, I'm here, I'm fabulous. And random strokes. Hello, it's the next day. I'm in tomorrow. And I have this picture that I did yesterday, and I want to make do two things to it. One is to iron it flat and to show you how I do that. But the other one is I'm just not happy with the purple I added at the end, which it must be so frustrating for you guys watching me, because I get painting halfway there, it looks pretty good, and then I just go and mess it up. Anyway, I do think that purple was the wrong shade. I should have gone much bluer, much duller. And I've been thinking about how to fix it. And of course, the opposite of purple on the complementary colour is yellow. Blue and red and yellow. So blue and red together make purple, yellows across. And I'm toying with how to dull it down. And I think I'll put a wash of yellow over it. Anyway, I'm going to have a go, and this might be a lesson for you guys to see whether it works or not. And I'm also going to press it down, as I said before. I've got my iron here, and I've got the canvas on the. I've got canvas that I've been working on, so I'll just show you. You'll see. So if I pull this down like that. Take away my painting board for the moment. Very good. And I'm just going to turn, this is quite hot. I've got it up full height, very hot. And I'm just going to put my painting down on this. There's a fair bit of water in that, so I'll blast it with steam. I do this on watercolour and acrylic. In fact, anything that's paper. Oh, look at that, beautiful. What was that, 10 seconds? And now I have a nice flat painting. Might still curl a little bit, that one's still a bit curly. I'll just see if I have another go at that corner. Doesn't mean it's going to stay flat forever, but it does give you a chance to get it framed, especially if you're framing it yourself. But that said, it also gives you a chance to put it inside a plastic sleeve, which I do. I'll show you. Somewhere like China. Crystal seal. Yes, made in China. Krystal. This is 13 inches by 19 inches. And you can see it's just the good size for this particular, or it's a bit too big actually. I'd love it if they did do one that was the right size exactly for this paper. But as long as you get it a little bit big, that way you can store your works on paper. Oh, actually put it the other way around. I like to put it that way. When I do my Tour de France paintings, I always put them in this type of seal. Put a little self-sealing end on it, which I fold in like that. Can you see that? Oops. I can't do both. Hang on, I'll just see if I can get it further peeled. That's better. So I've just peeled off the little, a little covering piece on the end, and I'll fold that up, sticky tape that down, and then when I've got sticky tape handy, wherever it may be, I've cleaned the place up. Oh, there it is. Hold on. Right. So I'll just sticky tape one end, then the other. That's for the extra piece, the piece underneath I fold up. So then when you actually are delivering your work, look how beautiful that looks compared to just the plain piece of paper. So put that on, mount it on a piece of foam core board with some double-sided behind it, and that's a nice gift for someone. That's a beautiful Christmas present or birthday present. Anyway, now up this. I've already got myself some fresh water, planning ahead. Painting back on there. You can watch me mess it up again, or not. So, fading purple. I want it to look like a shadow. I'm not quite sure how to correct it. I've got more. Yeah, still got plenty of paper plates, which is great. And Thinking of I'm still using this chromium, almost an orange yellow, and I possibly need to do lemon in there, but I did say I would stick with these, so I'm going to persevere and hopefully I'll do a very, very, very thin wash, and I'll just start on one side and just see how much I can knock that purple out. If I start over here, because this is solid, this is not moving. Just to show you before I start playing with the yellow, there's nothing moving on that. In fact, I'm just putting water all over it. You cannot budge that paint. That is there for good. That's it. Let's wipe that water off. I didn't really want to do that. Oh, it's a tiny bit of purple. I tell a lie, a tiny bit of purple has come off. Now, I don't know why. Theoretically, that purple's there for good. Now, I'm just going to knock in the yellow. Just see if I can dull that down. I know it doesn't make sense, but all I can think of was the yellow's the opposite on the... I don't mind it. To tell the truth, just for the sake of it matching, rather than have it just finish there, let's put a little bit of yellow around into that water. It's bringing out nice colours here in that teal area. Bring it down into the rocks underneath there. Because once I start fiddling, I'm terrible. I just keep going and going. Okay, putting a little bit of yellow around there, just for the fun of it. Okay, now I do think that has worked a little bit. It has knocked out that it's knocked out the purple. It's not so pretty. It's much duller. Just trying to decide if there's anything more I should do there or just leave it. I think I'll leave it. I think if I want to keep playing, I'm better off going to a new painting altogether. The only other thing I could think of is that has got very dull. It's not very dark. It's quite, I don't know if you can tell, it's lightened a lot. Let's turn that around so you can see it. This is all dark and lovely. That's become light. I think it was because I put that yellow over it yesterday, and there must have been a certain amount of opacity in the yellow. So it's a learning curve, because these are new paints for me, and this is the first time I've used them. And as I go, I discover yellow's opaque in this case. Shouldn't surprise me, everyone else probably knows that. So I'm going to just knock in a bit of very, very, very dark. I've just put black and blue on, and the blue is the ultramarine type blue. I'm just going to put some dark strokes in here, just so that when just so that it looks like they're in the foreground. They're not distant. Everything up front should be focused and dark and crisp. Things in the background can be soft and vague. That's a traditional way anyway. Then you can do variations on that. In so much as I won't go into it, but you could vary. You could have soft in the front and focused in the back, but it's a certain type of painting. Look at that later, maybe. Okay, so I've just put some more dark across the front there, and I think that'll do me. I kind of like the idea of a little bit more deep blue. Just let's see. here and there. Just I love to reward the eye with a new colour. It's like when you're looking at black and white photographs and suddenly someone turns on a colour version. It's so satisfying. Anyway, now I'm beginning to talk rubbish. What I'll do is sign this. I don't normally sign my paintings, but I do after the camera's turned off. But just to show you that I do, I'll do it while the camera's still turned on. And I nearly always sign in red. And I think I sign in red because it's a traditional Chinese, and it's a traditional way that in the old days people would use wax seals. Wax seals were red. Not sure why. I'd have to do a bit of homework to find out why, but red is a traditional finish to a work for me. And sometimes I sign right near the edge, and I think I'm beginning to try and make myself sign further into the image. Actually, I might put it over here. I like to put it in an unimportant place, but not too close to the edge, so that if your person you've given this painting to decides to give it a decent frame, they're not constricted by the fact your signature is going to be half hidden. So give the framer, give them a break, so to put your name further in than you would normally put it. Don't put it right around the edge. Now, get that out of the way. Just going to come up here. And nowadays I sign my full name. I used to just sign S. Peters because, to tell you the truth, I like to pretend I was a boy. I know that's a bit sad, but nowadays I'm out there. I'm a girl. I used to think I'd have a better chance in my career if I was just S. Peters. Oh. I'm not having much luck with getting a rich red here for the signature, but that doesn't matter. It's happening. I'm getting a name there. And I think if you put your full name there, people who come and look at your picture later on, they can Google you and find you. It's marketing. That's basically all it is. So if you want another one like this, come find me. I'm on the internet. Okay, there's my signature. It is what it is. The purple has dulled off a little bit. It's gone a bit brown now, but that's okay. It's a shadow. Shadows can vary in colour. If I did it again, I'd probably do a dark blue across there. Blue with a little bit of black in it, to tell you the truth. But that said, it's finished. Not finished. Change your mind. I'm going to add a bit more blue into this. Just going to add a touch more blue down into this shadow area. That's better. So I had purple there before, then I knocked it back with yellow. Now I'm still not happy, so I'm just putting the purple in. If this is a shadow, I want it to look like a shadow. That's better. So this is the lovely French ultramarine colour, so universally useful for so many reasons. If you had to travel overseas with a minimal palette, just take 3 colours. French ultramarine, burnt umber and white. You can make everything. The browns for the warm areas of a painting, the blues for the cool areas of the painting, and the white gives you the tonal range. So it does the job. Now I think I'm just about done here. I need to stop sooner or later. Just going to run a little bit of the blue in to move out. I'm using the very corner of this lovely brush, very tip of it. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, thanks very much. I'll put a flat view of it up on the video now. Oh, and if you've, just one thing, if you like this video, could you hit the like button and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and tap the notification bell, and that way you'll know as soon as I'm uploading a new video. So thanks very much. Bye bye.